when you start the unit, you want to make sure your main power switch is off. Make sure your propane's on. As far as propane goes, I keep 3 bottles with the unit every day. And typically you're not going to go through more than a bottle and a half. Especially a city crew, you guys are only going to be working 8-hour days. So we'll work 12 to 16-hour days and we'll go through a bottle and a half to 2 bottles. So as long as you guys have it. Sometimes there's bottle malfunctions as well. That's another reason why we like to keep 3. We always have one for backup. So bottles on, main power is off. You want to make sure that your hot oil pump is turned off, and this dial here is just like any other valve. To the right is closed, to the left is open. So you want to close that. That way there's no hydraulic pressure in the system while you're trying to start it. There's most hydraulic systems have what's called a startup valve, and basically it's a bypass that allows the hydraulic system to spin freely while you're trying to start it. This doesn't have a bypass hydraulic startup valve, so you'll just close your hot oil circuit and then start it.
So it would be good practice at the end of the day to make sure that's closed off there.
Yes, you can do that.
Yeah.
You'll know it instantly when you try to start it. It'll sound like the battery's dead. Hear that? It's lagging. So you'll know instantly. Once it's running, turn your main power on. It takes a minute for the computer to boot up. It'll always start with your main screen. So 90% of what this program is capable of doing, you guys you'll never use. So you've got your 3 patterns, which is patterns 1, 2, and 3. Now, whenever you pre-select a gun, it's going to show on the screen. So you've got gun 1, gun 2, and gun 3. Which, starting from the inside, just like the boxes, you've got gun 1, 2, and 3. With no bayonets installed, gun 1 is an 8-inch, gun 2 is 13, and gun 3 is 4. So, gun 1, if you're going to do a solid line with gun 1, meaning it's not going to be in pattern and skipping, you push that forward, and notice on the panel here, it shows a solid line. That's just a visual aid. That way, if you're in skip, it's going to show a skip. That way you're going to know, you're going to turn that on, and if you happen to look down there and go, okay, well I know I'm going to do a solid. If you wanted to do a solid and you look down and saw skip, well obviously you've got to switch to spot. The length of the skip shown on the box is relevant to the pattern, but these are so close that it's not. It should show a larger skip, but it's not. So gun 1 solid, gun 2, which is your 12 or your 13-inch solid, gun 3 solid. Opposite is your skips. If you're going to do a double yellow, with a double yellow, your patterns out here 4-4-4, or they are okay. If you're going to do a double yellow, you could do it one of 2 ways. You could either put the bayonet underneath 1 and 2, and you would go solid with gun 1 and 2, and that's going to give you a double yellow. Or you can put that same bayonet under your 13-inch knife and go solid, and that's going to give you a double yellow as well. The only difference is with the 12-inch, it's going to be a solid double yellow. You can't skip. Yeah, it's going to be all the time. If you want to do a skip solid, you'd have to use your gun 1 and gun 3 with the bayonet, and now you can go from solid left, skip on right, or skip on left, solid on right. And you can do that all on the fly. As far as your beads are concerned, because of the different patterns, you have to select your bead pattern as well. So if you're going to use gun 1 for anything, whether it's 8-inch with no bayonet, or let's say you have a bayonet in there to a 4 or a 6, but that's all you're going to use is gun 1, then you select gun 1, and then down here on your bead selector, you dial 6 through 8. Gun 2, which is your 13-inch bayonet, is 12 through 13. Gun 3, your 4-inch, is all the way down here at the bottom, just 4-inch. And then whenever you're using gun 1 and 3 together, then you're going to be at 444. So 9 times out of 10, I'll get a phone call saying, you know, my bead guns aren't working. You know, they work at this pattern, but they won't work at the others because they forgot to select the bead pattern. So once you've selected whatever gun or pattern you're gonna use, so let's say crosswalks, you guys do a lot of crosswalks, you're gonna be gun 1, and you're gonna be at 12 through 13. Your bead switch is gonna be an auto, which means it's automatically going to turn on when you start the box. To test the beads, to see if they're working, and you don't want to blow material down, you just want to check to see if your bead guns are working, then you select whatever gun you want to use, whatever pattern you're going to use, and then you come down here and you just hit on. And that will test your beads without opening the gun and having the material come out. So if you're going to do say bead test on 1 and 3, come down here to 1 and 3. Now the outside one should be opening. I don't have enough air. Once we're outside, we have it running. We'll go through all that.
So when you select down here, it won't show that.
No, not for the
Okay.
beads. Yeah.
Well, I mean for the paint. Like if I select 1 down here, will it show up here when I'm doing like 8?
Yeah. So select 1.
Yeah.
So now you know you're 1 in solid, and come up here to 6 through 8. That portion of it won't show here.
I got you.
But it's marked on there.
But it's
Yeah,
correct.
it's on there. Okay. Yeah, I got you.
Explain these operations.
So this
Selection.
this is how you navigate the computer and all the functions. So to navigate through that, you want to scroll up to main, then you can go either right or left, depending on what you want to do, and that just shows you all the different functions. We've pre set all this. You should have been supplied with a skip line manual as well. But like I said, 90% of that book is stuff you guys will never use. They're set up for multiple paint applications, whether they're different details for thermoplastic, paint, MMA, epoxy. They all use the same box, and they're just pre-programmed with all the different types of stuff you can do, whether it's profiled or any of that stuff. The box is just all set up for that already. So for instance, right here, your start on index is on paint right now, meaning as soon as you have selected your gun and you hit the start switch, it's going to start with material. If you had this over here to gap, as soon as you started, it would start with your gap. So if your pattern's a 2 and 8, which means your detail is 2 and 4 or 2 and 6, then it's going to start with a 6. You're going to turn on, and it's going to start with a 6 foot gap. You're going to turn it on. You're not going to have anything for 6 feet, and then it's going to throw in. Everybody in the world starts with paint. Nobody ever starts with a cap. So you don't want to change any of that. You want to make sure that your auto cycle and Durham and speed alarm, all that's off. Some of these you might not even be able to change, even if you wanted to, because they're just set. So scroll over one more, and now this is your counter. This tells you how many feet each gun did that day. So do you guys keep footages? Yeah. Okay. So to clear it, once you're at counter channels, just hit the center button. Oops, let's come down here. Here we go. Now hit counter options. Clear, don't clear. Scroll down to clear. Hit it. Boom. Now you're at 0. Everything's at 0. As soon as we go out there today and we start doing some stuff, whatever we do today, we'll show on gun 1, gun 2, and gun 3. Then the start of your next shift, where you've got to keep your numbers, just scroll down again. You've got an odometer, hit 0, no options because we're already cleared. Scroll over some more, and now it's got more of the system extras and stuff like that in there. If you want to change if you want to change the time which your beads come on, I like to set the guns up to where as soon as you turn your material on, your beads open up automatically. Some companies use these for nothing but lining, so they will actually have a delay as far as when their beads open up. They'll open up 6 inches to a foot after the gun turns on. Since you guys are doing things like crosswalks and stuff like that, if you just have them turn on and off exactly at the same time, and have your bead guns pointed to where the ribbon hits the ground, have your beads pointed to where it's lining right there, then you'll all be good. But if you wanted to change that, you would do that. You come over here to gun system, gun setup. There might be calibrations. I'd have to look through here a little bit. But we'll know if that's been set up right when we start, and if it's not, I'll find it on here and change it. So other than that, it doesn't matter where you are here in the screen. That doesn't affect any of these as far as you don't have to be over here. You don't have to be on the main screen for all of these to work. They'll work no matter where you're at on the main screen, but I like to come back to main just so I can see the patterns and where I'm at with that. So to get the unit hot, once it's running, your main power is on. Burner power, that sends power to the igniter switch in your rheostat. To set your temperature, this is what the current temperature is right now. It always displays current temperature. So right now it's 62 degrees. If you push the button in on the side, that tells you what it's set at. So typically, I'll always start right at 400. To change the temperatures, you can change the temperatures without pushing that button in. Like right now, I'll turn it all the way down and it might be near 0. It's at 58. But I can keep turning it without pushing it, and it's going to change. I like to push the button in, that way I can see exactly what I'm changing it to. So we're going to come up here to 400. Now we're set at 400, 401. You got burner power on. Now you hit igniter, and you'll be able to hear it start down there. Boom. Now you've got flame. So you won't be able to hear that while it's running. You might be getting low on juice.
So if we won't be able to hear that while it's running, So we should be able to look in there and see the flame.
Unless it was dark out, you wouldn't be able to see it really. You'd have to. You'd probably see a reflection off of this.
Oh, I see what you're saying. On the bottom.
Yeah, because you've got. If you look down here at the bottom, you've got two wires hanging off. That's one's ground and one's power to the igniter. And other than that, it's just the burner sitting underneath it.
Is it possible to start the flame before you start it up?
Yeah, but then you're just drawing off the battery.
Okay.
Yeah, so you want it running.
Okay.
So once it's started, you've got the igniter on. You want the engine running. Then you're going to turn your hot oil pump on, and that's going to circulate your hot oil material. So the kettle it's a hybrid kettle. It's both oil jacketed and air jacketed. The bottom quarter is oil, and that oil is what heats all the components necessary to get the hot material from the kettle down to the gun. It comes out of the kettle here. There's a Y strainer which will collect any debris or anything like that. It could be 10 years before you ever worry about taking that screen off. It's going to be a long time down the road. Comes out of the kettle, goes into your pump, comes out of the pump through this line into your head. The whole head is oil jacketed.
Wow.
Comes out of the head. There's a soft line that wraps around the knuckles to keep all these components hot. Into the oil jacketed material line. Comes out, wraps around more your valves and knuckles, and then comes back in to the kettle, completes the circuit. So there's two valves for your oil system. You've got one here, and you've got one there on that's your outlet, and that's your inlet. These valves have to be open whenever the machine's running. That pump is strong enough to where if these lines are weak, it'll rupture the lines. There'll be internal ruptures, they won't be external, but the only time these valves are ever shut is during maintenance, if you have to maintenance the unit. But other than that, before you start it up, you have to make sure that both those valves are open.
So since we never have to close them, at the end of the day, leave them alone.
Leave them alone. Yep.
All right, so that's the valve right there that,
Yep.
okay.
Like Warren was
And that
talking
one.
about, he's talking about that internal, I'm gonna add some. If it's an internal rupture, see on that oil jacket, you'll see it in your material, is that correct?
Yes.
That's where you'll see, instead of your white, your nice white, it might be a dull gray or a brown.
And it's going to be very thin. It's
Yeah.
going to be like water. You'll instantly know.
Okay.
It's not like you'll think, oh, there's a little something wrong with my material. You're
Yeah.
going to open it up and it's going to be super thin.
Yeah.
You're going to know there's a problem. Very uncommon. What the things that will cause a failure in the hose is if you don't blow the machine down properly at the end of the day and you leave this hose full of material. That in its own isn't that big of a deal if you chose not to ever blow the system down here. The only thing that's going to do is instead of being a half hour to 45 minutes before this unit's ready to go, it could be an hour to an hour and a half, because you have to try to heat that 1.5 inch core of cold material up. And it's going to be hard to push through the head. You're going to waste a lot of material trying to blow it out. So by using the blowdown features and clearing the system, it just gives you more productive time on the job. You're not wasting time, purging material. You're just ready to go. But what will cause this to fail is if you leave it full and you drop the carriage while this is cold, because the cold thermo is harder than the line is. So when you drop it, it could bend and kink like that, and that would cause it to rupture. Not as critical for a small hose like this that doesn't have a lot of flex, but some of the full-size thermo trucks and equipment where the hoses have big drastic loops in them, and they wheel the carriage out 4 feet and they have a 2-foot drop, those type of things will instantly fail a line. But as a rule of thumb, you'll leave the carriage pinned in its upright position until the system is at operating temperature. Then you can pull the pin, then you can drop it. But pretty much you'll be watching. You've got 2 thermostats. You have a mechanical on this side, and there's going to be a degree of difference between that and your rheostat.
On the blowdown, we may have
We
missed
missed
that.
that part. Did you do that already?
They weren't in there.
I talked to a couple people about it, but once we get to that point,
Okay.
we'll talk more.
Are
and
these
more about
also, you already talked about those?
it. Yes.
Trying to figure out what
Okay,
we
where did
missed.
they go?
These are the bayonets. So you install these depending on what pattern you want to achieve under what gun. So this is a
Oh, I see.
this is a 4-inch with a 8-inch bayonet. You can install that on the Gibbs underneath.
So that changes the free size.
Correct. And or the thickness of the line. So with
Tighter ribbon.
exactly. So without a bayonet, you can still install a 4-inch and an 8-inch and a 13-inch. Your material is going to be thicker, which means you have to travel faster to lower your millage. With this, it starts out thinner, and you can control your millage better with your pump speed.
How do you know what size that was? Is on that?
Correct. So this is a 4, this is an 8.
Okay.
So right now, the only thing that this bayonet is changing as far as these 2 guns are concerned is just the thickness of your millage. So now instead of starting out, let's say roughly starting out with 100 mils right off the bat, you might start out with 40 mils, and now you want to increase your millage. You do that by increasing your pump speed. The bayonets just give you a much cleaner look, and it gives you more control over your millage that you're installing. So I don't do anything without the bayonets. All the work that I do and all the work my crews do.
Since we're on the topic of the bayonets, our city standard for the standard crosswalks is a 6-inch line. Probably be going for 90 mils. And then our high visibility crosswalks, we use the 12-inch. So however you want to tailor that information to the use of the bayonets and speed and pressure and all that. 6 and 12 basically.
Yeah, so you'd be using a bayonet on your 8-inch, and you turn that 8-inch into a 6-inch by putting a 6-inch bayonet in. And then with your 12-inch, you just slide a 12-inch bayonet in there, and now you can control your millage.
And then number 2.
Yeah.
So basically gun or solenoid 1 and 2 would be the ones we use the most.
Correct.
And occasionally we would have the 4-inch like the chicken tracks and stuff. The line tracking through intersection with number 3.
Correct.
But we don't necessarily need a bayonet for that.
No, but
But-
it would be in your best interest to use a bayonet for all of
fast.
it. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Especially if you're going through an intersection.
More precision,
Cleaner.
cleaner line. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right, okay.
Is that like when you see on thermo, like a hop skip or something, you know, when they go down the road, you see like a little dribble, you know, like where it's stretched out. Is that where the bayonet comes in play? Keeps
Yeah,
it clean?
it'll keep the drippings to a minimum.
Right.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
seen that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I follow you.
So that pretty much covers the latch switch here. Some companies will pre-install on their trailers a holding bar and that latch on the front right there. If you have that open, you drive that into a pre-installed bar.
Right here.
Yeah, and then once you bump into that, then you just hit that and it locks it into place.
Like on for traveling and stuff.
They'll use it for moving from one location to another, so let's say they've got half a mile to go down the street to the next location, they'll use that rather than strapping the whole thing down.
Is that a bar that we can purchase, like if we wanted to use that feature? Where we
Yeah,
can
we
click
can,
into it?
yeah, we can make those. But
So we really need to make sure this thing
Yeah,
is
we
strapped
need
down
that.
good, because if this ever hit the front of a truck or
that.
something, you can mess this up then.
well, once this is on the trailer and you have the brakes locked, I mean, you'd have to get in a head-on collision for this thing to move. I mean, those brakes are good. Big,
Seen the way some of these guys drive around? We got
So-
bad streets in Memphis sometimes.
yeah, but I mean, as far as strapping the unit down, the crucial one is the rear that you want strapped, because if the tire starts to turn at all while it's on the trailer, then the back can walk. But other than that, I mean, you don't have, when you strap them up there, you don't have to get crazy with the straps.
I missed this, when you pull this, you have to raise this, or is it up?
Once you fire it and your carriage is in the up position, it'll automatically raise up about another half an inch. Yeah, and then you'll be able to take that off and set it in there. Then when you drop the carriage, it'll go all the way to the ground. But we'll go over more of that once we've got material in it and we're ready to go.
That question's gonna be real loud. In the event of when it happens, what's the deal to change the tire?
In case you need to change the
Yeah,
tires.
in the event or in case it happens, is that any kind of, yes, do's or don'ts about changing?
No, they're just lug nuts. Just
Okay.
zip them off and zip them back on.
I know what it needs to be empty.
No. Nope.
It won't be me, no.
How do you
We've had,
Yes, well, once we get outside, I'll show you how to use this as well. This is your emergency hydraulic backup valve to release the brakes in the event that you have engine failure or a hydraulic failure. In the event that the unit can't move under its own power, then you pump this up and it'll hydraulically unlock the brakes and you can manually push it.
Does this go forward and back?
Yep. That's forward, that's reverse.
some of the guys missed your preliminary going
Yeah, we
over
missed
everything.
all
Would
of
you
that.
mind giving a general of all the major components again?
Yep.
And then also how we did the 3-cycle setup on the screen?
Okay. So the whole unit's propane fired. It's the shared fuel source for the burner as well as the engine. Engine, air compressor, propane, hydraulic tank, air tank, main console, hydraulic pumps. One is for the drive system, the other is for hydraulic components. Emergency brake release, hydraulic brake release. V-tank, beads, heads, combo head, gun 1, 2, and 3, 8-inch, 13-inch, 4-inch. Jacketed material line, your material kettle, it's your strainer, and your hot oil reservoir.
Does it check its own level and have a safety backup if it runs low or up?
So-
It should never, I guess, but
The only reason that this would ever fill, so heating oil, we use I think we're using a Chevron turbine oil. I'll have to look.
Heat transfer oil.
Yeah, it's a heat transfer oil. So it expands to a rate of 2 to 1. So whenever checking this, you don't, if you look at it cold right now, you'll notice that material's down here. Sometimes you might not even see it at all. Sometimes it might be back in here so it looks like it's empty. So when you're checking it, you don't want to check it cold, you want to check it hot. So once you're all at temp and you pop this, there's no pressure. This is just a reservoir, which is there's no pressure involved in this. So you take this cap off at any time. It might be hot, you're gonna wear your gloves, but it's not gonna blow up on you. Typically, I'll keep it right around here. That way, if you're on any kind of an incline, it's not going to overflow. If it does overflow, it's just gonna come down this pipe right onto the ground. There's only two things that would cause,
Just about level with that.
yeah,
Okay.
there's only two things that would cause this to overflow. One would be that you overfilled it, or two, if one of these lines was collapsed. And it most likely would be collapsed back on this side somewhere. And what would happen is it would take all that material that was in there and it would pump it into here. It wouldn't have a place to complete the circuit, so it would come back up here and fill up. That's the only two reasons that would ever cause that to overfill. We've never had a problem with any of those lines collapsing.
Well, you call it hot oil. What type of oil goes in that?
It's a turbine, heat transfer oil.
Turbine heat transfer.
In the manual should state what type of oil to use on that.
How often you change it?
And that depends on use. We change them every year. We use these things a lot. So we'll change heat transfer oil over time will lose its ability to hold heat properly. As well as it starts to coke up on the bottom. All the impurities that start to crystallize over time will start to fall on the bottom. It'll build up a hard sediment. If you were to, I would recommend switching this out at least every other year. If you guys have downtime like we do during the winter, we go through several months a year. We do just preliminary maintenance, preventative, and we go through all of our equipment. And we do it once a year. Once a year wouldn't be bad. You're only talking less than 5 gallons of heat transfer.
So that's a plug down there. Drain plug. I mean, if I had to do that and get the oil out, where's the drain plug?
What I would do, if you want to get the old oil out, with the unit cold, I would disconnect this heating line here, put it in a bucket, start the unit up, spin the pump, and just pump the oil out while it's cold. This stuff is, it's the consistency of motor oil when it's cold. When it's hot, it's thinner than water.
So that oil actually will help keep the solution hot. It's
Correct.
like around the tank. Instead of coils, it's oil.
Correct. So, well, the oil basin on this kettle is only about a quarter of the kettle. From here up, it's air jacketed. So the primary purpose for the oil is to keep the components hot. The air jacketed portion of it is what maintains the temperature of the material that's in it. Is your kettle air or oil?
Air jacket.
Okay.
Remember we went through that, ours are air jacketed. And say if like on a long line, they would have a separate furnace system just to keep your hot oil circulation. They've got it built into this, right into the kettle, which is a nice feature. You got to keep all those lines hot because if you have your material, say at 400 degrees, you want to keep that material hot, fluid, clear to your guns, and that's the idea of the oil, is to keep that all circulating.
Does this kettle have an agitator that stirs the material or anything? Or
So
just a
it's,
pump?
now this is a perfect time to take a look at what this pump looks like. So this is the pump shaft. It is not an agitator like the MB equipment. So the bottom of that pump shaft is connected to a centrifugal pump, meaning it spins and it throws the material out to the side of a bowl to the outlet that comes into here. So there's no agitators needed because once you have the hot material in there and you're spinning that pump, you'll actually see that it is agitating. It just doesn't have the fins on it because you're not trying to break down the material to heat it up. Yeah, so it will actually move material around, and you could, if you had this kettle full of material, you could actually have that pump wide open. You could be spinning this pump at 650 RPM, and you can't overpressurize the system because it's an open top pump. Anything that doesn't go into that bowl just stays on the top. So it's not like a Bueno pump where you could just
Positive
displacement. You can't deadhead this. So
Well, we need to empty this thing, make sure we have this empty at the end of the day.
every day. So your kettle management is something that you guys want to keep in consideration. it's the end of the day and you only have 100 feet of crosswalk left to do, you don't want to fill this thing all the way up because it's just that much material you have to dump out.
What's the capacity?
This is 400 pounds.
And
So-
so what is your level, Warren, as far as how full would you fill that?
Typically I'll fill it all to about 3 inches from the top for the first kettle. I'll fill up high because you're going to dump probably 20 or 30 pounds purging the system. So I'll start a little high. It doesn't matter where you guys start, but if you only started down here, well, you're going to purge half of that, and you're only going to go minimal feet.
Kind of like in the spring.
Correct. So it is critical that this is emptied at the end of the day. If there's a breakdown or something and you're not able to empty this, it's not the end of the world. It's just going to take hours to heat that up, and you won't be able to empty it on the road like you would, because you're going to heat up a little bit on the bottom. You're going to dump that out. It's going to be stringy. It's going to be cold in spots, and then you're not going to get anything. You're going to have to wait for some more to heat up. So you want to make sure that this is emptied 100% at the end of every shift.
And then the thing too is, like we mentioned on the other truck, if you're gonna be in some real steep ground or something like that, keep in mind that level's gonna change, so you might not wanna have your kettle as full if you've got a real steep incline or something. So you mentioned on the truck, you don't want it to splash.
So the city of San Francisco, one of the criteria that we had to meet with this unit was that it was capable of climbing their steepest hill, and it did it with no problems. The horsepower and the hydraulic system is excellent on this. It'll climb anything in San Francisco, which means it'll climb anything here in Memphis. And they typically will run theirs at any of their, it doesn't matter how steep their hill is, if they leave it below this air vent right here, they're pretty good.
You talk about the importance of the holes in the screen.
Yeah.
And then also the safety aspect of not opening this when you're doing the blowout at the end of the day.
Yeah, and we'll go over this again.
Well, just they missed it, so.
So as far as before you fire the machine up, there's things that you have to make sure that you've done the previous day. And one is you want to make sure that this valve is left open. That's closed. That's open. So the reason for that is if this valve is closed, okay, and all your guns are in the stop position, which means that head is completely closed, and you bump this blowdown switch, what that's going to do is that's going to pressurize this section of hose with air. 120 PSI is what's going to go into this. So if this was closed, that was closed, you hit that blowdown switch, you pressurize this cavity, and this is full, you crack this open, that air is going to rush in through the bottom of that, it's going to blow all that material out, and whoever's standing right here when that happened is going to be a burn victim. So I can't stress the importance of knowing where that switch is and knowing where the position of these valves are. So at the end of every shift, after you've done the blowdown procedure, protocol is that this valve is left open. That way, in the event that you hit that, it's going to immediately vent into here. It's not going to build any pressure. It's just going to vent. Something happens and you left that closed, you've already filled material and you've hit that switch, and now that you know that line is pressurized, we'll put a pan under here and make sure everyone's cleared out of the way, and then you'll just hit this blowdown switch. Or, I'm sorry, you're going to hit the pump, you're going to hit your start switch, opening the gun, relieving the pressure to the bottom of it.
Explain again how to use this, the blowdown feature, so we won't mistakenly
So at the end of the day,
wrong.
you're getting ready to empty this
Really
kettle.
empty it out.
You're gonna make sure that this is open.
Open first.
You're gonna put a pan under here. You're gonna open guns 1, 2, and 3. You've opened them. You've watched the guns open, so you know that they're open. Then you hit the blowdown switch. And what that does is that's going to clear all the material out of this line and this head. That way, the next day, it's empty.
So that's pretty much after the guns are empty, or while they're empty.
That's all going to be part of the same process.
It's part of the same process.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they'll go through that several times.
Yes. And it's a little more than just taking this blowdown switch and just holding it on. If you do that, it's going to rush air through there, so it'll be real quick. You'll just turn that thing on off as fast as you can. Boom, 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 boom. You'll do that a couple times to get the volume of material down. Once the volume is down, then you can hold this on for an extended period of time. And you'll notice how much air loss you'll get out of here immediately, because once you've had this on for 2 or 3 seconds, you're going to watch that carriage start to drop because you've lost system air. So it does. The whole blowdown process shouldn't take more than 30 seconds. I mean, there's not a lot involved in getting that material.
So that's basically a switch you never hit unless you got it open over here.
Yes.
And you're ready to purge the system.
Exactly. So you
just
don't ever want to hit
don't
this.
hit that accidentally or nothing else.
Exactly. And like I said, once we
If the valve's open, there's still material in the tank, and you hit the blowout, and it's still gonna probably empty into the line, right? You're gonna have to continue to blow out
But see, the
until,
valve's gonna be open.
because the valve is open. And let's say you
Yeah,
still had a
I-
little bit of material in the tank, it would still allow that material to filter into the line, right?
correct, and I made a mistake. I should have, once you purged all your material out of here, then you close this valve. With your gun still open, then you hit the blowdown, and that'll
That'll keep
clear
it
out.
pressurized.
Correct.
Right,
Leave
right.
it open.
And then when you're done, then you open it back up, and now it's put to bed.
All right, yep.
Okay, is there any kind of special safety thing to make sure that these are emptied and there's no pressure before we open that again?
This gun will, if you leave this gun open, if you leave all 3 of your guns in the open position, then when you shut that, you know that there's no pressure.
So that's the visual thing we're looking for. Okay.
But you should hear air coming from your guns if
Right, you'll
once
hear it
shut
too.
off. Yeah.
You'll see it and you'll hear it. To not accidentally open that and have that blow out on you.
And if there's, I mean, let's say there was just a little bit of material in there, that wouldn't be enough to push that volume out.
Right.
The danger point is if you're halfway or completely full.
Okay, good. We have face shields and safety equipment to be wearing too as well.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
So with that said, let's take her outside and
You probably start that kettle up, start heating the dirt. Start the truck. You want to bring that out?